As a child, my parents always said that family comes first and that you should always help your family. I grew up with a brother, and I helped him a lot as we were growing up. Later, I built a good life for myself. I found a wonderful wife, a home, and a stable job. I thought I had it all figured out. But then my brother came back into my life, consumed with jealousy. He wanted what I had, including my wife, and I felt isolated, standing alone against everyone. After over 5 hours on the bus, we finally passed the Oakland Zoo, nearing my home. I glanced out the window, relieved that my time on the road was almost over. My house in Oakland was within reach, and I was eager to unwind and reunite with my wife, Susie, after 6 long months apart. My name is Joe Thomas, a 27-year-old former senior airman in the U.S. Air Force. Earlier today, I concluded my 4-year active duty service as a fighter aircraft integrated avionics technician. My role was to ensure that the electronic systems of the aircraft functioned properly. This marked the end of my 3rd and final 6-month deployment, this time at Ramstein Air Force Base in southwestern Germany. I had landed at Edwards Air Force Base in California earlier in the day and decided to take a bus ride through the California countryside to reflect and relax after the long haul from Germany. As I stared out the bus window, my thoughts wandered to my future. My military service was over, and I was at a crossroads in my career. Should I return to work at the family business, or should I pursue something entirely new? My father, Bill Thomas, has been an electrical contractor in Oakland for years, running the family business. After high school, both my twin brother, John, and I apprenticed under him. While I chose to join the Air Force, John stayed behind to help our parents. Now that I was back, the question loomed, should I return to crawling through ceilings and fixing wiring, or should I carve out a fresh path for myself? Then there was my wife, Susie. We started dating during my apprenticeship, and we married a year after I joined the Air Force. I hoped that our marriage would be strong, but over time, things had started to drift. The 6 months leading up to my most recent deployment were fine at first, but I sensed a growing distance between us. Being apart for 6 months probably hadn't helped. Maybe the novelty of our relationship had started to fade after 3 years of marriage and over 5 years together. I wondered how I could reignite the spark. Susie works in the family business, helping my mom manage operations. She handles finances, job scheduling, and equipment orders while my dad, John, and the electricians handle customer work. I've always believed Susie took the job to be close to my family while I was away, even though it's not hers. Originally from the Midwest, she moved to the Bay Area for college, where she majored in business. Now, I wasn't sure how she would react to my decision not to return to the family business. After getting off the bus a few blocks from home, I walked the rest of the way, carrying my duffel bag. I arrived home at 4 p.m., earlier than expected. Initially, I had planned to return around 7 p.m., with Susie picking me up. However, an earlier transport allowed me to make the journey across California sooner. When I stepped into the house, everything looked the same as it had 6 months ago. As I moved to the bedroom to unpack, I noticed the bed was unmade, with the sheets scattered on the floor. I heard the sound of water running in the shower and realized Susie was home. I walked to the bathroom and saw her showering, her back turned as she washed her hair. For a moment, I hesitated, caught off guard by the scene before me. "Are you getting ready to come pick me up?" I asked, breaking the silence. Startled, Susie jumped slightly. "Oh my God, you scared me. What are you doing home already?" "I caught an early transport," I explained. "So, here I am." "Well, I'll be out in a moment," she replied. "You can have the shower after me." I paused, expecting more of a welcome. No hug. No welcome back. Susie smiled faintly but seemed distracted. "I'll be done soon." I left the bathroom, feeling a little disappointed. This wasn't the warm reunion I had hoped for. As I started unpacking and sorting laundry, Susie eventually emerged from the bathroom in a bathrobe, her hair wrapped in a towel. So, you're really done with the Air Force? She asked. Yes, I'm done. They tried to convince me to re-enlist, but I declined. Can they call you back if there's a war? They can, but only for the next 4 years, I said. Susie nodded and headed toward the bedroom while I went to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. This wasn't the warm welcome I had hoped for. I had imagined a hug, a kiss, anything to show excitement for my return. Instead, Susie acted as though I'd just come back from a quick trip to the store, not a 6-month deployment overseas. This wasn't like her at all. Curious and a little unsettled, I followed her into our bedroom and lingered in the doorway. She was hurriedly gathering the sheets from the floor and tidying up the room. After a moment, she glanced up and saw me standing there. Are you just going to stand there, or are you going to lend a hand? She asked sharply that I didn't make this mess. I replied, puzzled. How did the room end up looking like a tornado hit it? Have you been tossing and turning, or is this just from today? Susie shot me a glare. I was rushed this morning before work, and I came home early to prepare for your return. And yet, you don't seem thrilled to see me. Her words stung, but before I could reply, she turned back to making the bed. Feeling dismissed, I left the room and went to the living room, settling onto the couch. I wasn't implying that Susie had been unfaithful while I was away in Germany. Our relationship had been cooling off even before my departure, but her apparent indifference to my return after 6 months was concerning. I decided to put the thoughts aside for now, laying back on the couch until I drifted off to sleep. Joe, dinner will be ready soon. Go take a shower, Susie called, waking me. Darkness had fallen outside, and I realized I had been asleep for a few hours. I headed to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the hot water wash over me, hoping it would clear my mind. Feeling refreshed, I dressed and returned to the dining room. Susie had set the table with porterhouse steaks and mashed potatoes, my favorite. The comforting aroma lifted my spirits. That smells delicious. Thank you, Susie, I said, smiling. Welcome home, Joe, she replied. We also have ice cream for dessert. As I sat down to eat, Susie asked, why didn't you call me from Fairfield? I could have picked you up that I didn't fly into Travis. I landed at Edwards this morning and took the bus home. I figured you'd still be at work, I explained. Did you come straight home, or did you visit my mom and dad? No, I came straight home, to the warm embrace of my loving wife, I said, teasing gently. But Susie seemed preoccupied, her gaze distant. That I'm sorry, she said. I had plans tonight, and you surprised me. I didn't mean to neglect saying hello properly. It's okay, I replied. We can make up for it after dinner. I have 6 months of missing you to catch up on. Susie gave a faint smile but remained quiet as we ate. Her mind seemed elsewhere. After dinner, we moved to the lounge for dessert. She chose the recliner, leaving a noticeable space between us on the couch. It felt like she was avoiding me. Susie, I said gently, could we leave the TV off? Come sit with me, please. I'd like some quality time together. Reluctantly, Susie approached and sat beside me, though she perched on the edge of the couch instead of relaxing. When I leaned in for a kiss, she turned her head, offering a quick hug instead. Even that felt distant, more like a sibling's embrace than a wife's. What's going on, Susie? I asked softly. You've been distant since I got back. Is something wrong? I just need time to adjust to you being home again, she replied, avoiding my eyes. That's not like you, I said, frowning. You never needed time before. What's changed? Susie remained silent, her expression unreadable. Have you been seeing someone else? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Susie's eyes flashed with anger, and she stood abruptly. For a moment, I thought she might respond, but she bit her lip and stormed out, heading to the bedroom. A moment later, I heard the door slam. I sat on the couch, stunned. Taking a few deep breaths, I followed her to the bedroom, but the door was locked. Susie, can you open the door so we can talk? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. But there was no answer. Did I return to the living room, my thoughts a whirlwind? Was she upset because I questioned her loyalty, or had I hit a nerve? Either way, this wasn't over. Trying to distract myself, I turned on the TV and let the background noise lull me to sleep. The next morning, sunlight streamed into the living room, waking me. I stretched and made my way to the kitchen to brew coffee. Thinking I should offer Susie some coffee too, I walked down the hallway to the bedroom. The door was open, but Susie was nowhere to be found. After checking the bathroom, I returned to the lounge and noticed her car was gone. Had she already left for work? Glancing at my phone, I realized it was almost 8 a.m., late by my standards. After making my coffee, I decided to grab breakfast before visiting Mom and Dad at the family business downtown. In the garage, I found my pickup truck covered in dust. Despite asking Susie to drive it occasionally while I was away, it seemed she hadn't. When I tried to start it, the engine was silent. It needed a jump start. Fortunately, our house sits on a slight decline, so I pushed the truck onto the road and let it roll downhill. Gaining enough momentum, I hopped in, shifted into second gear, and released the clutch. The engine roared to life, and I made a mental note to take it to a garage for a checkup later. After leaving the garage, I stopped by a cafe near my parents' business and treated myself to a syrup waffle. Then I parked my truck in front of Thomas Electrical. As I entered, I noticed a young man behind the counter, likely a new hire. "Can I assist you, sir?" he asked politely. "No, thank you. I'm all set," I replied as I made my way toward the service door that led to the storeroom, workshop, and office area. "I'm sorry, but only staff are allowed beyond this point," he interjected. "It's all right," I reassured him. "I'm Joe Thomas. Bill's son. The one from the Air Force. That's right. Are your family members back there?" "Yes, they are," I confirmed. "Thanks." Walking into the expansive workshop and storeroom, I recognized familiar faces among the crew gathering equipment from the racks. Toward the far end of the room, I spotted Susie talking with my twin brother, John. Despite being twins, we aren't identical and resemble regular siblings with distinct features. Standing tall at 6 feet 3 inches with a sturdy frame, I have sandy-colored hair and bluish-gray eyes, traits inherited from Dad's build and Mom's coloring. John, by contrast, is 5 feet 9 inches with a leaner build, dark brown hair, and brown eyes, more like Mom's physique and Dad's coloring. What caught my attention wasn't just their conversation but its tone. It seemed more personal than work-related. John's occasional gestures, like rubbing Susie's arm or shoulder, hinted at him offering comfort. As I made my way to the office, I noticed them sharing a hug. It crossed my mind that John might be trying to reassure Susie after last night's tense conversation about her distant behavior. Inside the office, Mom greeted me warmly and wrapped me in a hug. "It's wonderful to have you home, sweetheart. So, is it true? Have you left the Air Force for good?" "Yeah, I decided not to re-enlist." "How have you been, Mom?" "Keeping Dad and everyone else in check." I joked. She chuckled. "You know your father marches to his own beat. You're just like him." As I released Mom, Dad stepped forward and embraced me, a rare gesture that showed his happiness about my return. "Good to see you, son." "Welcome home." "Good to be home, permanently," I replied. "How was Germany this time? Did you enjoy it, or was it starting to feel routine?" "It was good, and the guys there were great, but I definitely missed you all." "What are your plans now? Any regrets, or are you considering re-enlisting later?" "No regrets, not yet, anyway. I'm not sure what I'll do next. I might need a few days to figure it out." "Well, you know there's a job waiting for you here whenever you're ready," Dad said. Mom interjected. "Don't pressure him, Bill. He doesn't have to come back to work here. We've talked about this. This business belongs to him too, Betty. It's not just about John." It seemed this conversation had been simmering between them before. I hadn't mentioned to anyone that I wasn't planning on working here, so I was surprised they were discussing it. Are you planning to re-enlist or considering returning to work with us? John asked. Neither, I replied. I might explore other options. I haven't made up my mind yet, John nodded, and Dad said, Hey, Joe, what's on your agenda for today? Nothing specific. Why do you ask? How about spending the day with me? I've got a task I could use your help with, and we can catch up. Sure, Dad. Just give me 10 minutes to gather some equipment, and I'll meet you at the back loading bay. Sure thing, Dad said as he headed out. John followed him, leaving Mom and Susie at their desks. I noticed Susie hadn't spoken to me all morning. Actually, she hadn't said a word to me since last night's confrontation. I approached Susie's desk, crouched beside her, and spoke in hushed tones. Can we talk, or are you planning to act like I'm not here? I'm not sure we have anything to discuss, she replied coldly. That we have plenty to discuss. I just get the feeling you're avoiding it. Susie fixed me with a determinedly cold stare. Not until you apologize that I'm willing to apologize, but first, can you explain why you've been so distant since I returned? I noticed you were more engaged in conversation with John earlier than you've been with me. Do you still want to be married to me? She stared at me before finally replying, just because I didn't immediately initiate intimacy doesn't mean I've been unfaithful, but you've shown no affection at all, as if we're not even married. Care to explain? I pressed that I need some time to readjust. Readjust from what? What's really going on, Susie? Nothing, she said, her voice firm. Bill is waiting for you, and I have work to do. Please, just go. Realizing I wouldn't get any answers, I stood up and headed outside to the truck, where Dad was finishing loading the gear, ready to go. Joe, yeah, let's go. Upon arriving at the job site, we found ourselves facing a renovation project. The house had essentially been stripped bare, and Dad's task was to install new wiring throughout. After unloading our tools and equipment, we made our way inside. Carpenters and laborers were present, and we were greeted by the foreman. Fortunately, we didn't have to interact with the homeowners directly. Dad had started the job the day before, so the work was already underway. While I began wiring the outlets, Dad continued with the lighting. After about 2 hours, we took a lunch break, sitting on the back of Dad's truck. Take half of my sandwiches, Dad said, handing them to me. Mom always packs too much. Thanks. We ate in silence for a while, watching the other workers move in and out of the house. This morning, Mom mentioned something about me not returning to work here. She said you two had discussed it. What's that all about? I asked. Dad glanced at me, then shook his head slightly. Mom thinks it might be best if you didn't work with us anymore. She believes this is John's best opportunity to succeed that I don't understand. What does that mean? Is my presence somehow holding him back? She thinks he's comfortable as things are, but she's worried that if you come back, it might overshadow him. She sees this as his best chance to build a stable future, start a family, and lead a happy life. And how does that relate to me working here? She's concerned he might not achieve that if you're around, Dad admitted reluctantly. Geez, I always knew he was her favorite, but suggesting I leave the picture entirely for his happiness. That's a bit much. Yeah, I get it. We've had our share of arguments about it. I don't think it's fair, and I'm not satisfied with the situation, Dad said. What situation are we talking about? Dad looked at me, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Damn, you're completely unaware, aren't you? About what? What's going on, Dad? He looked away for a moment before speaking. I thought you already knew. Susie told us you were aware. Aware of what? Just tell me, Dad. Susie and John, he said hesitantly. They've been together since you left for Germany. She told us you two had broken up before you left. What? I felt my stomach drop. No, we never broke up. For a moment, I sat in stunned silence, struggling to process what Dad had just revealed. That I've been confused since I got home because Susie's been distant with me. And now you're telling me she's been with my brother? My twin brother. Dad shook his head, clearly uncomfortable. I'm sorry, Joe. I thought you knew. Susie said you two were considering separation before you deployed. She and John have been close for a long time, and we assumed they got together after you left. It means John's been after my wife for a while. I can't believe he'd betray me like this. Although maybe I shouldn't be surprised. Remember Maddie, my first serious girlfriend? She told me once that John made a pass at her at a party. I didn't believe her, and she broke up with me. Then there was Jane. After we broke up, she admitted John had always flirted with her while we were together. I don't think John envies you, Joe, Dad said. More like he resents me, I muttered bitterly. So now Mom thinks I should step aside so John can have my wife and the family business. Should I hand over my house, my truck, and my money while I'm at it? Would that make her happy? Your mom didn't realize they were deceiving her. She thought you had ended things with Susie and hoped they could find happiness together. She didn't mean to hurt you. John is dead to me now, I said firmly. He's my twin brother. He was supposed to have my back. I'll never forgive him for this. Not in a million years. And Susie? Dad asked that she's just as deceitful. Last night, I confronted her about her behavior, suspecting she was cheating on me. This morning, she had the nerve to demand an apology from me that I'm really sorry, Joe. This whole situation is a mess, so what will you say to John and Susie now that you know I didn't know the truth? Nothing, Dad replied. I'm afraid I'd lose my temper. I already confronted them when I thought you and Susie had separated. Even then, I told them it was wrong, especially since you two were still legally married. I took a sip of water, trying to steady my thoughts. Despite my fury, one thing drilled into us during training was maintaining composure in emotional situations. As I stepped into my house, memories of yesterday came flooding back, sharply contrasting with my earlier blissful ignorance about how messed up my life had become. My mind kept returning to the bedroom, the likely scene of betrayal. It seemed plausible they had just finished their tryst when I arrived, which would explain Susie's shock at seeing me. Perhaps she even wondered if I had caught John leaving. Are you able to continue working? Dad asked, breaking my thoughts. I'd understand if you need some time. I'm going out, Dad. I need some space to process all of this. Joe, don't do anything rash, all right? Don't worry, I replied. I'm not going after John or Susie. I won't ruin my life seeking revenge, they're not worth it. Give me a call later, Joe, just so I know you're safe and where you are. Sure thing, Dad. I will. I walked down the road toward the store to retrieve my pickup truck. This wasn't the return home I had imagined. Upon reaching the establishment, I intended to leave immediately, but something compelled me to stay. Circling around to the back, I entered the office where my mom and Susie were working. Mom glanced up and noticed me. Have you and your dad finished the job already? She asked. No, Dad is still on it. I came back to talk to my wife, the one who's been cheating on me with my own brother. What are you saying? You and Susie aren't together anymore? No, Mom. I just found out about the lies from this deceitful woman and my treacherous brother. We were never separated, they tricked you and Dad. Isn't that right, Susie? How could you betray me like this, with my own sibling? Susie said nothing. Instead, she fled the office, likely heading straight to John. Did you still want me out of the business so John can have my wife too? I asked bitterly. Is that the plan? I didn't know, Joe, Mom said, her voice trembling. I thought you and Susie had separated. That's what I was told. Why didn't you or Dad mention Susie and John when I called? Neither of you said a word that we didn't want to upset you, Mom admitted. We thought you needed time to move on. Well, now you know the truth. Good luck trusting them with the business, I said, storming out of the office, seething with anger. As I left, John approached me. Back off, John, I said coldly. It's in your best interest. You need to leave, Joe, he shot back. This isn't your place anymore. I didn't hesitate. One punch sent John to the ground. He wasn't much of a fighter and had always relied on me in that regard. Standing over him as he crouched on the ground, I spat out, "You're nothing to me, John. Do you understand? You're not my brother anymore. Don't call me, don't contact me, and if you see me, turn the other way. As for Susie, I don't care what the two of you do, but she needs to get her stuff out of my house today. I don't want her there when I get back." Leaving him on the ground, I walked to my truck and drove off. 3 months passed after discovering Susie and John's relationship. Susie moved in with John, prompting me to sell the house we shared. It held too many painful memories. The sale went smoothly. I covered the mortgage, split the proceeds with her, and moved into an apartment in South San Francisco near the airport. Within a week, I secured a job at a prominent aviation technical support firm. My skills were in demand, and although transitioning from fighter jets to commercial planes required some adjustment, I was adapting well. Finally, I began to feel settled. My new job and supportive colleagues helped me move forward. My parents visited, and I reconciled with Mom. Susie and John still worked with my parents, though Susie's role had been scaled back. One Friday afternoon, after finishing work, my colleagues invited me for dinner and drinks downtown. I gladly accepted. We met at a restaurant at 7 p.m. and enjoyed a meal before heading to a bar on Grand Avenue. While my colleagues ordered drinks, I excused myself to use the restroom. On my way back, I accidentally bumped into someone exiting the ladies' room. "Sorry about that," I said. "That it's okay," she replied, turning to face me. "Maddie?" I asked, surprised. "Joe." "Oh my God, how have you been?" Maddie exclaimed, giving me a quick hug. It had been 8 years since we'd last seen each other, back when we graduated high school. Maddie had been my first serious girlfriend and my first real love. She was also the first girl John had tried to betray me with behind my back. "You look great, Maddie," I said, smiling. "Even better than in high school. Do you live in South City now, or are you just visiting?" "I live in San Bruno, close to the airport," she said. "What about you?" "I live nearby too. I work in aviation, right near the airport." That's amazing. "What do you do?" "I'm an avionics technician," I said. "How about you?" "I manage a travel agency," she replied. "I thought you'd be working with your dad's business." I did at first. I apprenticed with him but later joined the Air Force once I was qualified. "And you're out of the Air Force now?" Maddie asked. "Yes, I completed my 4-year enlistment. I'm happy to be a civilian again." "All right. And I heard you got married, too." "Yeah, I was. But not anymore. We're separated." "How about you?" "You can't possibly still be single." "Actually, I am," Maddie admitted. "But like you, I'm separated, about 6 months now." I nodded in acknowledgement as a rush of memories and emotions filled my mind. Maddie had always been the one who slipped away, beautiful, intelligent, and devilishly witty. "I hope I'm not keeping you from your date," I said lightly. "He'll probably come looking for you soon." "You're still as smooth as ever, Joe," she replied with a smile. "But I'm not here with a date. Just a few girlfriends." "Are they single, too? Or are you already tired of my company?" I teased. "Never," Maddie said, laughing. "Actually, some of the guys I'm with are single as well. How about we gather our friends and make it a fun night for everyone?" "That sounds like a plan. We're at the front table. I'm sure we can arrange for another table." "Great. I'll bring the guys over." We returned to our respective tables, where I found a beer waiting for me. "Took you a while, Joe. Were you lost in the bathroom?" Mike teased. "Nah, just ran into an old flame on the way back," I replied with a smirk. The group at my table included Mike, Brian, Jay, and Teddy. Teddy, the eldest, served as our team leader. He was married with plenty of work experience, and like me, he had served in the Air Force. The others, as far as I knew, were all single. Does she have friends? Jay asked eagerly. Yes, she does. I've already arranged for us to join them. They're seated at the front table over there. The group turned their attention to the trio of attractive women. Their smiles widened as they sized up the situation. They look great, Mike said, nudging Jay. Teddy, do you think Joe deserves a promotion for this? Remember, I'm married, Teddy said, chuckling. You guys can thank Joe by buying him a beer. Let's not just stare at them, Brian said. Let's go over and join them, Mike and Jay. Just remember, Maddie's the blonde, and she's with me. You can choose from the other two, I joked. Got it, Mike replied as we made our way to their table. Hey, Maddie. Hi, Joe, she said warmly. Could you grab another table and chairs for everyone? As we rearranged the tables, Maddie introduced her friends. I'm Maddie, and these are Bethany and Kira. Hey, ladies. I'm Joe, and these are Jay, Mike, Brian, and our boss, Teddy, I added. So, how do you know Joe? Kira asked Maddie. He was my first love. We were high school sweethearts, Maddie said, eliciting gasps from Kira and Bethany. So, Joe, are you single? Kira followed up. Yes, he is, Maddie interjected before I could reply. But don't even think about playing matchmaker. He has some serious apologizing to do first. Uh-oh, sounds like you messed up, Joe, Jay teased. Yeah, I did. Big time, I admitted. Maddie leaned over to whisper, are you only saying that now, or have you finally realized I was telling the truth about John? I've only recently come to terms with it. He's the reason I'm separated from my wife. After seeing his true nature, I regret not believing you, I whispered back. Well, we were young, and he was your brother, Maddie replied softly. But if you want, you can try to make it up to me. I'd like that very much, I said, smiling. Maddie gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, drawing playful whistles from the table. Wow, Maddie, that was fast. Bethany teased. What did he say to win you over so quickly? I don't kiss and tell, Maddie replied with a smirk. Besides, Joe always had a way with words. Was he your first, too? Kira asked with a grin. Kira, that's a bit personal to ask in front of everyone, Bethany interjected. Fine, Maddie said, laughing. Yes, he was. Happy now. What about you, Joe? Was Maddie your first? Bethany asked. Yeah, she was. And the best, I replied, earning pats on the back from my friends. Is it just me, or is it getting warm in here? Bethany joked, fanning herself. All right, enough about Joe and me, Maddie said, grinning. Who are the single guys here? Keep these two ladies entertained. That would be Jay and Mike. Good luck, ladies, Teddy said, shaking his head with a laugh. The next couple of hours flew by. Everyone was relaxed and having a great time. Jay and Mike seemed to be hitting it off with Bethany and Kira, while Teddy and Brian enjoyed themselves as well. Personally, I found myself completely engrossed in conversation with Maddie. She had a way of making me feel at ease, and I probably wore a silly grin the entire time. At one point, I excused myself to use the restroom, and Maddie did the same. After finishing, I waited for her in the hallway outside. When she emerged, she leaned against the wall beside me. It's really great to see you again, Joe. I mean that, she said sincerely. Same here. I forgot how much I enjoyed spending time with you, I replied. Just being around you feels right. Maybe it's like they say about your first real love, you carry a connection with them for the rest of your life, I mused. Maybe, Maddie replied with a smile. I'd certainly like to put that theory to the test. Smooth, Joe, very smooth. Why don't we start with you giving me your number and then asking me out to dinner? She teased. What if I want to start by giving you a kiss first? I countered. Maddie met my gaze and let out a mischievous giggle. Okay, Joe, we can start with that. I leaned in and gave Maddie my first genuine kiss since our senior year in high school. It surpassed my memories of those times. Maddie gently placed a hand on my cheek and wrapped her other arm around my back. I reciprocated by holding her close. The kiss felt natural and deeply satisfying. As we parted, we locked eyes. Wow, that was amazing. You've still got it, Joe. Did I think that was all you, Maddie? God, I could use more of that. I leaned in for another kiss, but this time Maddie ended it a bit sooner. You said one kiss, not a marathon, she joked. We should head back to the table before I completely lose control, must we? I asked, half serious. If it were up to me, I'd be taking you home right now. Easy there, tiger. How about dinner first? I'm not that easy, Maddie replied playfully. All right, but can I at least have another kiss before the night's over? Yes, you can. I promise, she said with a grin. We rejoined the others, but my mind was buzzing with thoughts of Maddie. Over the next hour, the group chatted, danced, and got to know one another better. Jay and Bethany paired off, as did Mike and Kira. Teddy had left earlier to go home to his family, and Brian departed shortly after, leaving just the three new couples, around 1 a.m. Maddie and I were slow dancing when she mentioned that she and her friends would be leaving after the song. Remember, you promised me another kiss before you left, I reminded her. That's why I'm giving you a heads up now, Maddie said, gazing into my eyes. I leaned in, and our kiss began softly but quickly grew more passionate. The world around us seemed to blur as we focused solely on each other. When we finally pulled apart, Maddie looked breathless, her usual playful banter momentarily gone. Instead, she drew me close and kissed me again. It felt incredible how quickly we reconnected, as though no time had passed. You better remember to call me, Joe, she said firmly. That's something you don't need to worry about. I'm already eager to see you again, and you haven't even left yet. Maddie smiled and rested her head against my chest as we swayed to the music for the remainder of the song. When it ended, we returned to the table, where Jay and Bethany were engrossed in a kiss. Mike and Kira trailed behind us from the dance floor, looking equally smitten. As we headed outside to wait for cabs, each couple remained engrossed in their own conversations. When the first cab arrived for the three women, Maddie gave me a quick kiss and a reminder to call her before hopping in with Bethany and Kira, left standing were Jay, Mike, and me. Joe, I really appreciate this. Bethany is amazing. We've already set up another date, Jay said, smiling. Same here, Mike added. Kira actually asked me out. I was too nervous to do it myself, thinking she might say no. I'm glad I could help, guys. Tonight has been fantastic, better than I ever hoped. The next morning, I woke up with a slight hangover but nothing too bad. My mind was already occupied with thoughts of Maddie. After a quick shower, I headed to a nearby cafe for coffee and waffles. While I sat there, my phone buzzed with a call. Hello, hi, Joe. I realized I didn't give you my number last night. I just got yours, so make sure to save this, okay? I will. Actually, I've been thinking about you all morning. Well, that's not entirely true, Maddie said with a chuckle. You've been on my mind since last night. Really? Already smitten with me, Joe Thomas? If we were in Salem in the 1600s, I'd accuse you of witchcraft for casting a love spell on me, I joked. Oh my God, did you rehearse that line? Maddie laughed. Maybe a little. Did it work? Yes, it did. So, if I have you under my spell, can I command you to take me to lunch later? Consider it done. Just text me your address and the time. I'll do that. And Joe, thanks for last night. I haven't felt this happy in a while. I feel the same, I said sincerely. It's like hitting the reset button on life. New place, new job, new friends, and hopefully someone special to share it all with. If I find out who she is, I might have to compete, Maddie said with a mischievous giggle. What? I laughed at her unexpected response. Well, we're not exactly new, but maybe we can make it special this time around. I'll take that, I said, smiling. All right, my waffles are getting cold. Don't forget to text me your address. I'll do it now. See you soon, Joe. Bye, Maddie said. As I drove up to Maddie's apartment complex, I noticed there were no parking spaces available. While circling the neighborhood, I saw Maddie stepping out of the main entrance. I honked and waved, catching her attention. She looked stunning in a light blue floral summer dress that complemented her tan skin and loose blonde curls. Maddie jumped into my freshly cleaned pickup truck, the result of 2 hours of effort that morning. She leaned over and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. So, where are we going for lunch, Joe? She asked. What about Pedro Point? We can grab a snack on the way and enjoy a meal while admiring the ocean view. It's a short walk, but worth it. That sounds perfect, Maddie said with a smile. As we strolled along the trail toward the overlook, I reached out and took Maddie's hand. She smiled warmly, and I felt a rush of nostalgia. When we reached the trail's end, we settled on a patch of grass, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean. The view was breathtaking, and for a few moments, we sat quietly, taking it all in. Retrieving our lunch from my backpack, we enjoyed the sandwiches we had picked up earlier. I was expecting a fancy restaurant or cafe, Maddie remarked, but this is so much better. I'm glad you think so. I wanted to make today special, just dining out wouldn't have been enough, I replied. Maddie rested her head on my shoulder. You're making me feel nervous, Joe. How so? Well, just yesterday, I had no idea where you were or what you were doing. Now, I can't imagine not being with you. It's happening so quickly, and I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm sorry for not trusting you before, I said gently. It's not just that, Maddie admitted. I'm worried about being hurt again. What I went through in my marriage was painful, and I only truly moved on a few months ago. Now here I am, with you. I can't do casual, Joe. It's all or nothing for us, and that terrifies me. What scares you the most? I asked. Falling in love again, she said softly. Doesn't it scare you, knowing how painful love can be when it goes wrong? I've been through that pain, I replied. But I won't let it stop me. My past relationship won't define what we have. You're different, Maddie, and so am I. Together, we're something new. And your ex? Do I remind you of her? Not at all. I always wished she was more like you, or at least how I remember you. But what if you're not who I remember? What if you turn out to be like him? I can't speak for your ex or your past, I said earnestly. But in my mind, I'm still that high school kid who fell for you. I've gained some scars and experiences along the way, but at my core, I'm the same. And I'm hopeful for a great life shared with someone I love. Okay. But if you hurt me again, I won't give you another chance. I won't need another chance, I promised. Maddie smiled, and we shared a soft, tender kiss. After lunch, we returned to Maddie's place to spend more time together. Respecting her concerns about the pace of our relationship, I let her set the tone, taking things slow. On Saturday night, Maddie had plans to see a movie with Bethany, so we ended up on a double date with Bethany and her partner, Jay. I didn't spend the night, and on Sunday, I visited my parents for lunch, ensuring that John and Susie wouldn't be there. Throughout the following week, Maddie and I went out to dinner twice. On Friday night, the three couples met up again. At one point, Maddie leaned over to me and whispered, Joe, could you take me home? Are you feeling all right? Is something wrong? I asked. No, everything's fine. Actually, it's quite the opposite. I want you to take me home, she said, smiling. I met Maddie's gaze, raising an eyebrow. Are you sure? Yes, absolutely, she replied, giving me a gentle kiss. We informed our friends that we were leaving, and they seemed to understand without objection. Once we arrived at Maddie's place, she led me into the living room. Take a seat on the couch, Joe. I'll be out in a moment. Would you like a drink? She asked. No, I'm fine. Feel free to grab something for yourself. I decided against drinking more alcohol and opted for water instead. Settling onto the couch, I waited until Maddie emerged from her bedroom, wearing a red satin gown that left me momentarily speechless. Wow, you look incredible, I said, genuinely impressed. Thank you, Joe. I bought it this week, just for you, she said with a shy smile. You look absolutely stunning, I said, my admiration clear. Maddie sat beside me, snuggling close. We kissed gently, and then she burst into laughter. What's so funny? I asked, amused. I just can't believe I'm as nervous as I was when we were 18, Maddie said, her voice soft. It feels like the first time all over again. I feel like a teenager again, and it's all your fault, Joe. Don't worry, I replied with a smile. I feel the same way. If it makes you feel any better, I was a little nervous before I came over, worried if I'd had too much to drink tonight. Maddie smiled warmly and gently ran her hand over my face. We've only been back in each other's lives for a week, and I've already fallen in love with you again, Joe. I leaned in and kissed her softly on the lips. I'm so glad to be with you too, Maddie. Maddie giggled lightly after the kiss. Are we going to start calling each other by our full names now, Joseph? Just for today, I teased. Until our wedding day. Maddie froze for a moment, her smile fading as she looked at me, caught off guard by my comment. We spent the evening growing closer, the hours passing like a blur. It felt like reconnecting with someone I had never truly stopped loving. The night left us both with a profound sense of connection and warmth as we lay together, basking in the moment. Wow, that was incredible, Joe, Maddie murmured. I've missed you so much. I chuckled softly. So, you're only interested in my body now? Maddie nudged me playfully. No, I like you for everything you are, she said with a grin, forcing me to roll onto my back as she rested her head on my chest. Joe, was it as good for you as it was for me? She asked, her tone gentle. I'm not even sure how to put it into words, I admitted. It was amazing, Maddie. It felt like rediscovering something I never should have lost. She lifted her head to meet my gaze, her eyes shining. I can't believe how much I've fallen in love with you again. You know that, don't you? I love you too, Maddie, I replied sincerely. Over the following weeks, Maddie and I became inseparable. When we weren't working, I often stayed at her apartment, which was conveniently located for both of us. Before long, I started leaving some work clothes and a toothbrush at her place, making it feel like a shared space. It was remarkable how quickly we fell into a routine. It felt like finding a missing piece of myself and achieving a sense of wholeness that we already had a deep familiarity from our time together in high school, but now, with greater maturity and life experiences, we were discovering a deeper understanding of each other. One Tuesday evening, after dinner, I lounged on Maddie's couch, relishing the happiness of being by her side. She came into the living room wearing an oversized t-shirt that looked like a dress and curled up beside me. Joe, I've been thinking, she began hesitantly. This isn't necessary if you're not comfortable, but should we talk about what happened in our marriages? Just so we both understand how we ended up here. What's the purpose of that? I asked. So we can grasp what happened, she explained. I just don't want us to repeat the same mistakes. All right, I said after a moment. Would you like to start, or should I? You go ahead, she replied. I have a feeling your story might be longer than mine. Okay, where should I begin? Well, how did you two meet? What was she like as a person, back then, not how you see her now? We met at a bar when I was a third-year apprentice, and she was studying business at Mills College. We were both 21. She seemed pleasant but reserved. It took some effort to get her to open up. A few drinks helped with that, I said with a small laugh. I didn't think, she's the one, or anything like that. It happened gradually as we started dating. After my apprenticeship, I joined the Air Force. I proposed 6 months into my service, and we got married 6 months after that. Was it difficult maintaining a relationship while in the military? Very, I admitted. She stayed in Oakland for her job while I was stationed elsewhere. We had just bought a small 3-bedroom house, so we spent more time apart than together. It was tough. Maintaining a connection long distance is challenging, especially when your partner isn't able to relocate. What was her personality like? How did you two interact? She was determined, even stubborn. She struggled to open up about her feelings, keeping a lot to herself. But she could be warm and funny when the mood struck. I often felt like I had to create that mood, but sometimes I didn't have the energy for it, especially when I was stationed abroad. Oddly, the distance seemed to help our relationship at first by creating a sense of longing. When I came home, things would be great, for a month or so. I could tell she felt lonely when I was away, so I arranged for my parents to hire her at the family business. That way, she had familiar faces around to support her. When did she start working with your parents? During my 3rd year in the Air Force, about a year and a half after we got married. Is that when your relationship started to struggle? Yeah, I wasn't around much, I admitted. I was stationed in Germany for the latter half of my 3rd year, and then again for the final 6 months. During the 6 months in between, I was at Edwards with one of the test squadrons, so I'd only come home on weekends. Did she start getting closer to John during that time? Yeah, I suppose so. They always got along well, but I never suspected anything else was going on. Looking back, I think our relationship started to deteriorate because John was likely making advances on her at work. Do you think she might have thought about switching to the brother who would be home more often? If it were that simple, the timing doesn't make sense. She knew my enlistment was almost up, and I never said I'd re-enlist. So, essentially, she started seeing John when I had only 6 months left in my service. Maybe she just fell for him. He can be convincing, Maddie offered. It didn't affect you, did it? I asked. No, because I wouldn't let it happen. I loved you, Joe, and it would have been wrong, Maddie replied. But I'll admit, there was that night at the party when he crossed the line. I was a little drunk, so he kept bothering me because I didn't directly tell him to stop. Why didn't you tell him to stop? He was your brother. At first, I thought he was just fooling around, but then things escalated. He sneaked up on me from behind, hugged me tightly, and wouldn't let go, even when I yelled at him to stop. People just laughed, thinking it was a joke. I was furious you weren't there because John wouldn't have dared if you were. I was also mad at myself for not leaving the party right then, but I was determined not to let him ruin my night. That must have been awful, I said, my voice soft. It got worse. Later, he intercepted me in the hallway as I was coming out of the bathroom and pushed me into one of the bedrooms. You can imagine the rest, Maddie said, her voice trembling. It was the first time I found myself in a situation where everything happened against my will. No one helped me because they probably thought I was just fooling around with him. Everyone always saw John with you and me, so they likely assumed I was playing games. I nodded, anger simmering inside me. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. But at least you managed to stand up for yourself. Yeah, Maddie replied. He definitely felt it when I need him where it counts. We sat in silence for a moment before Maddie asked, "What's your story, Joe?" I sighed. I met my ex, Susie, in college during my sophomore year. We started dating and got engaged about a year after graduation. We married 2 years later. So, you were together for a few years before getting engaged, and then it took a while to marry. Why did it take so long? Looking back, I think we both had doubts but didn't realize it at the time. We were probably content with what we had and didn't feel the need to rush. Did you still have feelings for her after you married? At first, yes. But over time, like in your relationship with Simon, we drifted apart. I think we got married to try to salvage what was left, encouraged by pressure from our families and friends. It didn't work, we split after 6 months. What caused the split? Was it mutual? No, I said, shaking my head. It started when she lost her job and struggled with her next one. She turned to drinking, and that eventually led to violent behavior. Violent? Did she hurt you? It began with verbal abuse and escalated to physical altercations. One night, after coming home angry and drunk, she punched me during an argument. I don't even remember what triggered it. That was the breaking point for me. Did you report it to the police? Yes, I did. I got a restraining order, and she had to move out. I haven't seen her since. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Maddie said sincerely. Both with John and Susie. You're the only person I've ever dated who treated me well, I said, smiling at her. Really? So you didn't date anyone else before Susie? She asked. No. I was still recovering from what happened between us and didn't feel like dating anyone for a long time. My friends teased me, saying I was like a monk. Maddie laughed and smacked me lightly with a pillow. Joe, do you think you'll ever forgive John? No, I said firmly. It's not just about Susie or what happened to you. It's that he betrayed my trust. Even though we're twins, we were never close. He's always been envious of me, trying to take my friends and girlfriends for himself. Looking back, I realize I've never actually liked him. If he weren't my brother, we wouldn't even be friends. You know the saying, Joe, you can choose your friends, but not your family, Maddie said gently. Yeah, but it's tough when your family insists on being part of everything you do. Mom and Dad always pushed me to include him in everything. It's one of the reasons I joined the Air Force, to get away from him. Well, you're away from him now, Maddie said with a smile. Let's go to bed. I just want to cuddle for a while. Wait, you said we should talk about this so we can learn from it. What did we learn exactly? Not to fall for the wrong people, I guess, Maddie said with a shrug. Is that all? That we made mistakes in love? That, and don't settle for less than you deserve. Okay, I can agree with that, I said with a smile. Well, I'm going to take my first choice, the best girl ever, to bed. Maddie leaned in, kissed me, and took my hand, leading me to the bedroom. Over the following weeks, life unfolded in much the same way as it had been, though now it was hard to remember what things were like before reuniting with Maddie. I felt a profound sense of contentment, wondering if this was what true happiness and love felt like. Last weekend, Maddie joined me for lunch with my parents, who were thrilled to see her again. They were also pleased to witness my happiness and how I had moved on from Susie. This week, I consolidated all my belongings at Maddie's place. Since we were already spending most nights together, paying rent for 2 apartments had become pointless. It had been just under 6 months since my legal separation from Susie and the start of divorce proceedings, while Maddie's divorce had recently been finalized, 8 months after filing. Hopefully, my divorce would be finalized in a few more months. My mom's 50th birthday fell on Thursday, but the celebration was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at my parents' house. Over 60 guests, including family and friends, were expected. I knew I'd inevitably run into John and Susie at the party, but I resolved not to let their presence affect my relationship with my parents. As we were getting ready for the party, I glanced at Maddie and was instantly captivated. Her attire wasn't overly revealing but subtly elegant, perfectly accentuating her figure. Her hair was styled in a way I hadn't seen before, adding a touch of sophistication to her already breathtaking appearance. Stepping up behind her, I wrapped my arms around her waist, meeting her gaze in the mirror. Wow, you look incredible, I said softly. I just want you all to myself when you look like this. Maybe we should make a fashionable late entrance and spend the afternoon together instead. Joe, stop, Maddie said, laughing. We'll have plenty of alone time after the party. Besides, I'm doing this for you. For me? What do you mean? To be the most stunning person at the party, of course, she teased. I want Susie to see how little you miss her and for John to realize he'll never have what he wanted. So, you're doing all this to make them envious? Not just that. I want everyone to know we're the main attraction and they're the leftovers. Goodness, Maddie. How can you be both naughty and nice at the same time? For you, I can be anything you need me to be, she replied with a playful smirk. I leaned in and kissed her bare neck. I still can't believe how lucky I am to have you by my side. And you look fantastic, Maddie said, turning to adjust my blazer. I'm glad I convinced you to get some new outfits. You can't wear just t-shirts and jeans all the time. I thought I rocked the t-shirt and jeans look, I joked. You did, but look at you now. With that blazer and those trousers, you could pass for a male model, or a Hollywood star. Let me just tidy up your hair before we head out. I want you looking flawless. We arrived at my parents' house around 4 p.m. The backyard was already filled with a lively crowd, complete with a large gazebo set up for the occasion. As we made our way through the house, exchanging greetings with cousins, uncles, and aunts, we bumped into Mom, who was emerging from the kitchen. She paused when she saw us, breaking into a wide smile before pulling us both into hugs. Oh my, you two look like you just stepped off the set of a daytime TV romance. Absolutely stunning, she exclaimed. That you're looking great too, Mom. Hard to believe you're not a day over 40, I replied with a grin. Oh, Joe, you flatterer. Is that how you manage to charm someone as lovely as Maddie here? He's quite the smooth talker, Mom. But it's all genuine, Maddie chimed in. He definitely takes after his father in that department, Mom said, reminiscing. Bill was quite the charmer too. Well, happy birthday, Mom, I said, handing her a gift and kissing her cheek. Thank you, both of you. By the way, Susie and John are outside. Will that be an issue? Mom asked cautiously. Not at all, Mom. Tonight's all about you, so don't worry, I reassured her. While I hadn't planned to engage with John or Susie, I also hadn't intended to cause any disturbances. As we stepped into the backyard, Dad noticed us and made his way over. Hey, Joe. Hey, Maddie. Wow, Maddie, you look amazing. How my son managed to win your heart again is a mystery to me, Dad said, shaking my hand and kissing Maddie on the cheek. That I'm not sure, Bill. Your son is quite charming. Maybe he inherited that from you, Maddie said with a laugh. Beautiful and clever, Joe, you've chosen well, Dad said approvingly. Yeah, I think so too, I replied. Your mom seems to be enjoying her birthday, I added. She looks genuinely happy. You know your mom, half of it's probably a facade. She's been stressing over this party for weeks. Hopefully, she can unwind and actually enjoy herself now. That I hope so too, I said. Dad, about John and Susie, are they behaving? They're over there, Dad said, gesturing. If you're okay with it, I'll make sure they give you some space. That's fine, I replied. As long as they don't bother us, there won't be any issues. We mingled with the other guests, most of whom were family or close friends. Some faces at the party were familiar, while others were not. However, it seemed everyone recognized me, likely due to my height and build, which made me stand out. The majority of the guests, however, seemed captivated by Maddie, showering her with compliments on her beauty. At one point, Maddie headed into the kitchen to assist my mom in bringing out more food, and I noticed Susie trailing behind her. I shook my head, realizing that Susie had no idea who she was dealing with if she planned to confront Maddie. A few minutes later, Susie emerged from the house, looking somewhat upset. She approached John, and from a distance, it was clear they were attempting to conceal a disagreement. Shortly afterward, Susie walked away from him and chose to sit alone, away from where John was standing. Not long after, my mom, Maddie, and one of my aunts carried trays of food from the house to the gazebo. I caught Maddie glancing at John and then back at me, wearing a mischievous grin. Goodness, I adore this woman, I thought. After helping with the meal, Maddie strolled over to me, exuding confidence, perhaps even a hint of smugness. You've been up to no good, haven't you? I murmured softly as she stood beside me. You have no idea, she replied with a sly smile. I'm itching to hear all about it. I'll fill you in when we get home, she said. For now, let's just enjoy how uncomfortable Susie and John will be for the rest of the evening. That I glanced at Maddie, unable to suppress my smile, and kissed her gently. Once my divorce is finalized, I want to marry you. No engagement, just straight to marriage as soon as possible. Are you even going to ask if I want to marry you first? Maddie teased. I will, I promised. I'll get down on one knee, do the whole shebang. Maybe even serenade you if it helps. That I'm looking forward to it, Joe, Maddie said, laughing. Though I can't vouch for your singing, it might be the one thing you're not great at. Fair enough, I chuckled. I'll hire a professional for that. As Maddie predicted, Susie and John hardly exchanged words for the rest of the evening, and when they did, Susie's hostility toward him was apparent. I don't consider myself a vindictive person, but I had to admit, it was satisfying to see. Later in the evening, I went inside the house to use the restroom. As I left, I noticed John waiting outside for his turn. His face showed signs of apprehension. As I approached, he stepped aside to let me pass. I shot him a disapproving look and shook my head slightly as I walked by. That was the extent of my interaction with him for the night. After the party, I drove Maddie back to our apartment. As we got ready for bed, I was eager to hear about Maddie's conversation with Susie. However, Maddie made me wait, suggesting we shower together first. We exchanged a few kisses, and after she broke the kiss, she looked into my eyes. So, do you want to hear what happened at the party? She asked. I nodded eagerly. Well, Maddie began, I went to the kitchen to help your mom prepare the trays of food. She had to step out for a moment, so I was alone in the kitchen when Susie came in. She stood next to me and started putting food on one of the trays. Maddie rested her head on my chest as she continued. Susie started talking to me. She said, so you're Joe's new girlfriend? I looked at her and said, I guess I'll be his ex-wife soon. And no, I'm not Joe's new girlfriend. I'm Maddie, Joe's first love and the woman who's going to be his wife soon. I think that took her by surprise, Maddie added with a grin. And that's all? I asked, intrigued. Who's telling the story here, Joe? Maddie teased. Anyway, I added, thank you, Susie, for leaving such a wonderful guy like Joe for someone like John. Because of you, Joe and I were able to rediscover our love. She didn't take it well. She asked me why I assumed Joe wouldn't leave me like he left her. I told her, Joe didn't leave you. I left because he didn't trust me when I warned him about John's intentions. Your husband has a pattern of wanting what Joe has, his friends, his girlfriends, even his wife. Maddie gave me a pointed look before continuing. I also told her, John tried to force himself on me once. You might want to keep an eye on him, especially when he's intoxicated or angry. Those types struggle with rejection, Maddie said, giving me a knowing look before exiting the kitchen. I recognized that look. It's as if she understands the true nature of John, Maddie continued later. I suspect he may have already been abusive toward her, maybe not physically yet, but she seemed to grasp it. That could explain their altercation earlier. When she returned to John, she avoided him for the rest of the evening. I wouldn't be surprised if he's already been manipulating her to do his bidding. Chances are, John was a completely different person when you weren't around. Your presence likely kept him in line, but he could be quite cunning and manipulative when you weren't there. It really makes you question how well you can know someone, I said. But why didn't anyone tell me about his true nature? Tell you? Maddie replied. What were we supposed to say? That your twin brother, whom you adored, was a complete jerk who probably couldn't stand you. Plus, he was always present when you were around, making it nearly impossible for our friends to bring it up to you. I didn't tell you because I feared you wouldn't believe me, until that party, at least. And even then, I was proven right. You didn't believe me. Yeah, I admitted, shaking my head. I can't believe I was so blind to his deceit. I was incredibly naive. No, Joe, Maddie said firmly. You're just a good-hearted person who wants to see the best in others. Don't ever let him change that about you. Maddie turned off the shower and handed me a towel. Enough storytelling. Let's head to bed. Besides, I have something else to share with you. I quickly dried off and followed Maddie into the bedroom, snuggling under the sheets with her. So, what's the other thing you wanted to tell me? I asked. Care to guess? She teased. Okay. That I'm the best lover you've ever had? Well, yes, Maddie replied with a laugh, but that's not it. That you can't wait to marry me again? Yes, but still not it. That you're the most gorgeous woman I've ever laid my eyes on. Joe, stop teasing. Maddie exclaimed. I paused, sensing her breath close to my face as we lay together in the darkness. Okay then. I'm assuming, you're pregnant. Yes, she replied softly. I kissed Maddie tenderly, the moment seeming to stretch on forever. Well, I said, grinning, lucky for us I'm not interested in getting engaged, right? Can't have you walking down the aisle visibly pregnant. How far along are you? Not far, she said. I went to the doctor this week for confirmation. You're not upset that we didn't discuss it first, are you? I think it happened while I was switching birth control. No, I'm thrilled, truly. I can't wait to marry you, to buy our own house, and to have 4 kids running around. 4. Maddie said, laughing. I'd like to maintain my figure, you know. I'm sure you'll be the most stunning mom at the PTA meetings. The fittest, smartest, and most charming mom in the Bay Area. You always know how to charm me, Joe, Maddie said, smiling. I love you, Maddie. I love you too, Joe. Less than 2 months later, my divorce was finalized, about 7 months after separating from Susie. 2 weeks after that, Maddie and I tied the knot in an intimate ceremony with family and friends. Bethany and Kira were her bridesmaids, while Jay and Mike stood by my side as my best men. We purchased a house in San Bruno that needed significant renovations, but with help from my dad and co-workers, we turned it into a home. Our son Mason was born 6 months after Maddie and I were married. Now, Maddie is expecting our second child, a healthy baby girl, according to the scans. My parents are delighted to be grandparents, though they continue to manage the family business without John or Susie. Susie left John shortly after our wedding, apparently because of a restraining order my brother filed against her. She returned to the Midwest to be with her family. Maddie's intuition about John's violent tendencies proved accurate. My parents eventually drew a line with John's behavior and removed him from the family business. He remains a silent partner, like myself, but now works for another contractor in San Jose. As for Maddie and me, my dad's prediction came true, we couldn't be happier. Maddie remains the love of my life.